Today's event is going to be one Arab journalist. Our friend Natasha Tynes is on vacation, so you'll have to put up with my sole presentation. I'm going to start in Cairo and Tel Aviv because that's where Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, has been trying to revive and move the Gaza plan. The Gaza plan, a 15-point plan, was based on the 20-point UN Security Council resolution that was passed and is mandated by the Trump plan. Jared Kushner met in Cairo. Guess with whom? He met with the chief head of the Hamas Politburo, Mr. Khalil al-Hayya. Mr. Hayya was just elected, and he's considered to be relatively moderate. And they talked about the decommissioning of Gaza weapons. And of course, the Palestinians have said that they had agreed to the 15-point plan, which Israeli Prime Minister totally refused. They refused to accept. And now, instead of pushing Netanyahu to accept that plan, it seems that, again, we are witnessing a moving of the goalposts. So the Israelis are saying, we don't want to do anything. We will not withdraw from the 60% of Gaza we occupy until all of Gaza's Hamas's weapons are destroyed, and not put in Irish IRA type warehouses controlled by the Palestinians. They want the Americans to destroy them, and given that the weapons will be given to Americans. So Jared Kushner arrived in Israel, and he met with Netanyahu. Netanyahu is, of course, extremely busy now with the Likud primaries, but they still had a meeting with Netanyahu. And guess what? They came up apparently with some kind of a plan. The plan, the Israeli Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying the Prime Minister and Board of Peace had deep and constructive discussion. I doubt that they were deep. It was agreed to establish two working groups, one on disarmament and demilitarization of Gaza, which both Israel and the Board of Peace are determined should be prompt and completed before any reconstruction happens in Gaza. This is not what the plan talks. The 15-point plan, which actually Netanyahu saw before it was presented to Hamas, and he thought that Hamas would reject it. Then Hamas accepted it. President Trump praised the plan, and now it seems that, according to this statement by the Israeli Foreign Ministry, which I'm not sure is accurate, that both Israel and the Board of Peace are determined that this disarmament should be prompt and completed before any reconstruction happens in Gaza. Why are the people of Gaza being punished? Okay, you have a problem with Hamas. Fine. Why are you stopping the construction? Phase 2 of the 20-point plan, which Trump had earlier presented, said that after phase 1 is over, when the hostages are all released and so on and so forth, then the second phase allows for entry of heavy equipment to start actually lifting the rubble. There's still over 1,000 bodies under the rubble. And now they're not even allowing any reconstruction until the disarmament, which is against the 15-point plan, which calls clearly for reciprocal. Hamas would disarm first phase, Israelis would go back phase 1, phase 2, and so on. So it's a reciprocal kind. And now the Israelis who are in power, who are in control, are saying no. To be honest, I didn't expect much to come out of this. As I said, Netanyahu will unlikely do anything to hurt his own election campaign. But what I was a bit surprised about, and I'd like to talk about, in fact, I wrote a piece on my own personal Substack, is that Jared Kushner met with the head of Hamas, which I don't mind. I think it's good that they met with him. But they have not yet met with Mahmoud Abbas. Now, Mahmoud Abbas is 12 miles away from Jerusalem, where Jared Kushner met with Netanyahu. Why doesn't he meet with the most moderate, peace-loving, internationally recognized Palestinian leader? Israel and the U.S. for some reason, have taken a decision to boycott the Palestinian leadership while talking to Hamas. Now, this reminds me of what has been happening since 1967, and it's actually an old colonial policy: divide and rule. In early after 67, Israel began propping up Islamic groups so that they can be against the Palestinian nationalists. They began in the West Bank propping up tribal leaders, monarchists, and so on, so that they would be against the PLO. Then they, more recently, in the last few years, even before October 7th, Israel, under Netanyahu, supported Hamas, allowed Qatar to bring in suitcases full of cash. Millions of dollars entered into Gaza with approval of Netanyahu, all because, and again, Israeli columnists have said this, and Israeli media covered it, because they didn't want the PLO. They didn't want to talk to Mahmoud Abbas, the most moderate and anti-violent leader of the Palestinians. And then they went to the UN and they prevented Mahmoud Abbas from going to the UN, because they knew that Mahmoud Abbas was going to the UN as invited by France and Saudi Arabia to increase their recognition of the state of Palestine. But still, Mahmoud Abbas spoke on video conferencing, and he said whatever he wanted to say, and he made commitments. He made reform commitments to stop giving unconditional money to people, families of prisoners and martyrs, committed to, again, with UNESCO, work on the Palestinian curriculum, and to allow elections. We already had last April, the municipal elections were happening in November 28th. We'll have legislative elections, and the first quarter of 2027 we will have Palestinian presidential elections. So the Palestinians have done everything that they've committed to moderate. And under occupation, the idea that you want a liberal democracy when people are under occupation, when the occupiers can arrest the nominees, can stop the elections, can turn off the electricity, can turn off the internet, makes no sense. Yet the Palestinians are saying, okay, you want to buy the Israeli conditions, we will go by the Israeli conditions, and we will go with all these reform conditions because they are good for the Palestinian people. Now, just to kind of go back to Netanyahu is clearly not interested in doing anything until the elections, because he cares more about staying in power than listening to the Americans or the international community. And the problem he has now is with his own Likud party. Now, Netanyahu has insisted that he is responsible for nominating 33% of all the what is called assured seats. Likud is expected to get between 22 and 25 seats in the upcoming elections. So Netanyahu knows that if the elections, the primaries, which are happening today in Israel for the Likud party, goes as expected, there will be many more extra far-right members of the Likud, which will make his attempts to appear as a centrist very difficult. So he wants to appoint the third member on the list, the 5th, the 9th, 11th, the 15th, the 18th, the 26th, and 29th. He wants all these slots to be his own choosing, based on whoever he wants if they don't win in the primaries. So we are in a situation where nothing is going to happen until the Israeli elections in October, and hopefully the Palestinian elections in November, because they're happening after the Israeli elections, they will be somewhat okay. Now, what does Trump think of the elections? And that was a question that Trump has been asked by the media, and Trump has refused to endorse anyone. He said, I don't want to be involved in the upcoming Israeli elections, but he has said that he is interested in maybe in the future nominating somebody. We don't know who that person is, whether he's interested in nominating Netanyahu, and maybe he's kind of trying to push Netanyahu to do things he wants, or maybe he wants to basically give up on Netanyahu because he can read the writing on the wall that Netanyahu is basically a loser, and maybe he's going to endorse the potential winner of the election. So we don't know what's going to happen to that. Now, on other issues in Palestine, the situation in Palestine is quite difficult. The settlers have moved in to besiege a Palestinian house in the village of Kusra near Nablus, and they have not relented. They have turned off electricity, internet, they've turned off water, and it's been like 6 days since this family has been surrounded, and the Israeli army has done nothing about it. They have not stopped it. They have not, they're trying to do certain things, but they say they cannot stop the settlers because they don't have permission to detain settlers. They can detain Palestinians, but not settlers. And the Israeli defense minister has said, you know what? I don't want the army to be involved in the occupied territories. I want the police to be involved. Now, we know who is the minister of police, Ben Gvir, and so he's given the army 2 weeks to turn over the entire occupied territories to the police. I don't know what will happen, but the interesting thing is the law. Which law will apply in the occupied territories? Now, we know that there's thousands of military orders issued by the central and military commander of the Israeli army. Will these orders apply, or will we now, in a kind of creeping annexation, the West Bank will be under Israeli law, Israeli civilian law? That would be really interesting to see how that will play up in the international community that has opposed, and Trump himself has opposed, the annexation of the West Bank. So we'll wait and see what happens there. Now, on another issue, I would like to go into the Iran situation. Now, the situation in Iran is quite complicated, as you probably know, but today, Monday, the 17th of August, is exactly 60 days since the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States. And that Memorandum of Understanding was the timeline of that MOU is 60 days. So today, Monday, the 17th, is the final day in this Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the US. Will things happen? Will we see another round of fighting, or will we be living basically in uncharted territory again, because there's no reference point to any agreement? Now, maybe this is good for the US, maybe it's good for Iran. The Americans, Trump has been battered by what happened in that MOU, and maybe he thinks he can get a better deal, but it is known what you can gain in war, it's going to be difficult to gain in peace. So the MOU is probably the best thing that they can get. And, interesting things have happened. J.D. Vance yesterday said that the nuclear deal is not the priority now between Israel, the US, and Iran. It's the number 2 priority. So the Straits of Hormuz have all of a sudden become the number 1 priority for the US government, and the nuclear issue, they're not really as high on their list as it used to be. So all of a sudden, we have a situation where the US has changed its priorities. The Israelis are basically being held responsible for getting the Americans into this war. And, Netanyahu is about to lose the elections, and Trump is probably going to lose the House of Representatives and possibly Senate, and it's going to be a lame duck. So you'll have either a new government in Israel, or maybe if there is a deadlock between the two big coalitions, that Netanyahu will stay in power as a caretaker government, and then, God forbid, this is going to continue the reign of the settlers and the extremists in Israel. Now, in the US, I want to kind of go back to the midterm elections and the primaries, because interesting primaries are happening in Florida. Now, Florida is known to be a red state. It's mostly a Republican state with a governor, senators. I think 20 out of the 27 congresspersons are from the GOP, the Republicans. But there are some analysts who say that maybe it's going to change. Maybe the person running for governor, maybe a person running for Senate might flip the state. Personally, I'm interested in only one race, the race for a woman called Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This woman I know I've been affected by because she was personally responsible for ending the U.S. Congress support to the Sesame Street Palestine project. We were so excited about doing Sesame Street in Palestine, and first season went good. The second season was a Jordanian, Palestinian with some Israelis. And then because the PLO recognized, PLO became at the UN recognized as a state, Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the US Congress stood and stopped $3.5 million grant that would support Sesame Street in Jordan and Palestine. So we were affected negatively by that decision. And now she is running, her district has been broken up because of the decision of the governor of Florida. And she moved to a neighborhood, a different race. And now apparently a progressive group has endorsed a 27-year-old substitute teacher who overcame childhood homelessness in his bid to unseat Debbie Wasserman. His name is Elijah Manley, and he's been supported by the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. And this committee is supporting Elijah Manley for the 20th Congressional District. And, you know, she is white and Jewish and 11-term Congress person. And it seems that at one time, I think she was the head of the Democratic National Committee. But it seems that the district that has been gerrymandered is almost 40% African American, and she is a white woman trying to gain a seat with the majority blacks, whereas Elijah Manley is African American. And so everybody's going to be watching that race tomorrow. And I'm hoping that this Debbie Wasserman Schultz will no longer be in Congress. So I hope that she loses. Anyway, this is the overall discussion of today. Rose Weiland and Yusuf Suleiman, I'm so glad that you've joined us. I hope that I've been able to make some things clearer for you. And I'm so grateful for those who have agreed to be paid subscribers. We've always promised that paid subscribers will get half an hour free chat with me once a month, and that I'm available to provide any paid subscriber with contacts, relationships anywhere in the Middle East that I can, especially for journalists, analysts, NGOs, and I want to work in the Middle East. I'm more than happy to help you get started. So if you're not a paid subscriber, consider being a paid subscriber, but in all cases, follow us. And thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, and hopefully next week, Natasha will be back, and we probably will have a guest next week. So I know you like to have guests. So this week, it's only me, but next week, hopefully, it will be either 2 or 3 people that are joining us every Monday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Amman, Jerusalem time. You're welcome to join us at 2 Arab Journalists, 1 Levant. Ila liqa, goodbye.